about it. So I'm going to talk about the wireless features. I have only 2 slides. I will try not to talk to them too long, and then we're just going to demo the product because I know that's what people are mostly interested in. Having looked at the BIOS, it looks like there's a fairly wide range, people that aren't too familiar with WildPackets or OmniPeek to people that are quite familiar. So I'm going to kind of start a little bit back, using it kind of from the beginning. I want to kind of walk through it a little bit like a use case. You guys, a lot of you here are all using wireless, right? So the first thing we're going to do is kind of look at the room, kind of see and kind of take it from that perspective. What can we see with OmniPeek in this room? What can we use it for there? And then if there's some things that we really can't demonstrate that way, like perhaps roaming, perhaps so the other decodes, things like that, then we can open some trace files and do that. So getting on. So real quick, why we're a leader, right? So Monty mentioned we've been in protocol analysis since 1990. But that's not all we do anymore. Like you said, we have the appliances. We're layer 2 to layer 7. That's a lot of it is also about application performance analysis. But the protocol analysis part is still very relevant, especially when it comes to wireless, right? Still, a lot of what people are doing in wireless is straight protocol analysis. It's what a lot of our customers do. It's even what a lot of our end users do with the product, because when you're using a product like OmniPeek for wireless, what you're really looking at is that last couple of 100 feet. Right? Otherwise, the traffic's on the wired network, and we could look at it with our other tools and really, in some ways, have a better capability at layer 3 to layer 7. But that, layer 2 wireless, that's really what people use OmniPeek for wireless. So the protocol analysis is still really, really important there. Monty said, again, we've been in wireless analysis since 2001 with a lot of firsts. Some of the things that didn't come up when Monty mentioned it, we were, again, the first with a network analyzer that was visual for wireless, but on top of that, we were the first ones that were commercially available that were involved with the Wi-Fi Alliance in its very, very early days. We were used in some of the initial interoperability testing before they even had this huge network of certified test labs out there. There was basically one test lab here in the US. A lot of it was done with OmniPeek, and we followed with a lot of firsts since then. First with 11N, first with free-stream capabilities, first with aggregating multiple channels together, and we know that these things have worked well because other people have followed suit in the industry. So we feel real good about that. It's just kind of some of those firsts. Places where we're used by a lot of the chipset vendors. Actually, a lot of them. We have actually very strong relationships with some of them. Atheros/Qualcomm is one of those. Actually, we have a license to their source code for their driver, and we actually modify that driver so it can be used in promiscuous mode to be used with OmniPeek. We have relationships with other chipset vendors like Raylink, who actually modify the driver for us and still can be used with OmniPeek, and others as well. Certainly used by Broadcom. They use it mostly internally. They don't make an external driver available, but they do use it internally. And I made some other notes just to be sure. Intel, for sure. Intel's a big user, not only very much on the wireless side, but also on the wired side as well. They use it on the chipset side, on the device side, very, very heavily used. Device manufacturers, again, heavily used there as well for wireless. Monty mentioned Cisco, and I'm going to mention a little bit more when I talk about the OmniPeek Remote Assistant, which is a new piece of OmniPeek that we're announcing today. And it allows for non-technical users to be able to take packet captures. We don't like to use those words when we talk about it from a marketing perspective because nobody understands what a packet capture is except for kind of people in the room. But I'll use it in here. We originally solved the problem for Cisco. The problem being that whenever they wanted to go out and capture packets, because they were having a problem with the wireless network or even a wired network with a customer, they typically send a field engineer on site, strictly to capture packets. And with this OmniPeek Remote Assistant, as I'm going to show you, it generates a very small executable, a 500 kilobyte zip file that can be emailed out to an end user. They don't need to be technical. They just unzip it. There's an executable in there. You double click, run the executable. It captures packets. You stop the executable. You zip the files back up. You send them back to the network engineer at Cisco, and you just saved them $2,000 because they didn't have to send a field engineer, out to Ohio to go take packets. Now he may need to go out the second time, but at least now when he goes out, he's got a good idea what the problem is, right? And he's not just out there fishing. So that's OmniPeek Remote Assistant, and how I got on there from device manufacturers, I don't know. That's where Cisco uses it in their Technical Assistance Center, and we expect now that we're kind of productizing OmniPeek Remote Assistant, it will be used in more. We're still used in the Wi-Fi Alliance and the Certified Test Labs. Since we were the first out there with an 11N capability, the Wi-Fi Alliance picked that up, and we're baked into the 11N interoperability tests. Not only does Wi-Fi use it, but not pretty much all of the Certified Test Labs across the country and across the world use it. UI and workflow, that's another thing that we're well known for. I work at a lot of trade shows, talk to a lot of people who are familiar with WildPackets and OmniPeek and even EtherPeek and AeroPeek from the early days. And the first thing they'll say about OmniPeek is regardless of what they think about it and how it compares to other products, and even if they use other products, free or not, they'll say the workflow is ideal. I mean, just the way the workflow, the right click, the UI, the analysis that it's able to do, it is better than some of the free products. But it's not free. Okay, so there's people that are still going to use free, and we're never going to change their minds. But from a UI perspective, we really do kind of have it nailed. And then experts. What does that even mean? Not as that we're experts. That wasn't what I meant. There's a feature in the product that I'm going to show called experts, and what it is a lot of background analysis that goes on. So instead of just doing some overall monitoring and looking at things and trying to say, oh, there's 10 users here and there's 7 users here and these are on B and these are on G. It's really more about what's going on in the background. Or even though we're not a spectrum analyzer, are there signs of interference, and should we be flagging that? Are there signs of some sort of attacks? Should we be flagging that? Are there rogue devices out there? And should we be flagging those? And that's what the experts are about. And we have a very wide range of experts on the wireless side that I'll show you. That was slide 1. I'm going to go through this one faster because I'm going to try and demo most of the stuff that's in this slide. Why do people need OmniPeek? Well, we stay very current with the state of the art. And I'm going to show you that in here with things like Monty mentioned with 11AC and some of the new decodes. One of the first places we're going to go was a dashboard we call Compass that's got a lot of new wireless features in it. Always current, again, same points, right? AC and the new decodes. And then rogues, I'll show you how to do that in the demo. Networking and application analysis. That's, for us, there's a lot in there, right? We have our experts. We do nodes and ports, decryption, all that on the networking side, and then on the application side, again, we have our experts. We can do voice over IP and video. We have application performance analysis, and all that is built in. A lot of that we're going to see today. Multi-channel analysis, the ability to capture on multiple channels at the same time. Easy to demo. I'll show that. Show roaming. Remote analysis. I'll be able to show some of that. That's where that OmniPeek Remote Assistant comes in. And I'll talk a little bit more about some other ways that we can do remote analysis specifically for wireless as well. And then I'll talk a little bit about extensibility, which is another key aspect of the product. So we're nowhere near the wrap-up. All right, so first off, what am I doing here? What's the setup, right? So setup is pretty simple. I have OmniPeek running on my laptop right here, and that's it for OmniPeek. I am connected to the wired network.
Quick question for you. Given your history in the Macintosh platform with EtherPeek, have you ever considered releasing a Mac version?
We always consider it because it comes up a lot. People ask us about it, but it's not very high on the list right now. I think it's getting. Over time, it may get higher. That's what I already took the picture, right, for later, right? So when we go back to engineering and say, why should we do it on a Mac? Well, okay, look at 13 of the 14 computers on this table, or maybe it wasn't 13 or 14, but 11 or 14, or something to that effect, right? So it is coming up more and more. Yeah.
Had to ask, sorry.
It's okay. No, that's why we're here, right? There's no secrets here.
I was thinking the same thing. The exact same thing. I was wondering, did I miss something while I was typing a note or something that?
Yeah. And now you're all going to tweet, and it's still not on Mac. So what I have set up here is OmniPeek on a Windows PC. I'm on the wired network, but that's just for the purposes of what we're doing in this room. That's neither here nor there for the demo. And attached to it is, just because this is the way I decided to attach it, there's a USB hub that's got 2 dongles off it. This is a 3-stream relatively new dual band device, and this one happens to be a 300 megabit per second, a 2-stream dual band device. It turns out I could have put 2 3-streams on here. I'm running it, this is an aside, I'm running still a pre-production version of OmniPeek, because Omni 7 doesn't come out till the end of the month. And there are a few issues here and there. And this morning we thought there was an issue because of too many 3-stream devices on here. It turns out that wasn't the issue at all. But because I got it working this way, I stopped. So there's those two. And there's a third one. There's a third USB device here as well. This is another 3-stream device, 450 megabits per second. All these are in sniffer mode and capture mode right now, being used by OmniPeek. So I'm able to use these devices in various combinations, and you'll see that as I walk through the demo, right? So I could take a capture on a single device, I could aggregate the devices together, I could do an aggregation of all 3 and then go back and still do a single capture on another device, and there's reasons why I might want to do that. So again, all 3 are there. It could have 3-stream devices. I could have more devices. The only issue with putting on more devices is if I went to put them on that hub, eventually there's not enough power on the USB port back here. I would either need one of the cables with the 2 USBs, right, or I need a powered hub, and that's what most people do that want to gaggle at least 3 devices together on a USB hub. They'll buy a powered hub, and then you can do 4 at a time per hub, and there's really no issues from there on. So that's kind of my setup. So a typical way to use OmniPeek, and what I would do here is, and I've had this running for a while, you can see up on the top, back because there's no way I can point up there. So up here it says scan. That's just the tab of the capture that we're running right now. And this is what I would do first when I would come in a room, right? Because I do know what our AP is set to in here. I know what WP temp is on, but I wouldn't know normally. So I would just come in and say I'm going to scan. So what I'm actually scanning on, because I can show you the options, I can go to the capture options. So you can see I'm actually scanning on the N channels 1 through 11. I just limited to that because I knew we were going to have a BG network in here. I could have gone A channels as well. So, and I started that, did that strictly because I wanted to get a feel for what was in the room. And I've simplified the view for now to just all of the overall nodes that we're seeing, all of the ESS IDs. So right now, and I've been running this, like I say, from before you guys got here, so I just started a little early, but certainly, you guys are probably all connected to WP Temp, which is up here. We do have our own internal wireless network, WP Wireless, but you can also see all of the other ESS IDs that we can see from this spot. Everything is relative to what we're doing here, with these devices. So I could pick a lot of them out because I know a neighbor, John Muir Health, their guest network, Pacific Plaza, that's the name of the building. We can see their access points. Central Garden and Pet, right upstairs. We can see their access points. And then you get a little bit of this, and there's the undefined access points down here, are things that don't have any SSID, not broadcasting a name or whatever. We're still going to see packets on there, but we don't know what name to assign to it. So you kind of just, at first glance, get the overall list. And why would I do this? I would mainly have done this because I knew I was interested in coming into the room and looking at WP Temp. And now I see it's on channel 6. So I could, and what I would do next, and it's what I had done earlier, I just went over and started a second capture just on channel 6 because I know that's what's going on in this room. But usually that wouldn't have been the case, right? If we go back over to the scan, right? A lot of our neighbors, they're on 1, 6, and 11. So that would have more typically been the case. So just to show you what I would have done then, I would have come up and started a new capture. And I would have, instead of scanning on a particular channel, let me get names so I don't lose track later, multiple ways when we go to capture. So, right now when I did that scan, I was on a single adapter, this one right here, as attached to my computer, my local machine. But we have other modes as well in there where we can capture. I would go up to the aggregator, channels 1, 6, and 11. You actually let me, for now, just for a second, well, we'll just start. I was going to stop. Let me stop the scan. Just because, I've lost track after all this time of what channel that's on, and I don't want these to clobber each other. Go to our new capture. And then, like I say, instead of doing a single device, we can do an aggregator right here, and I'll show you what that looks like. So it lists all of the adapters that would be available to me, wired and wireless. But we can see on the wireless side, what's available is that Edimax, that's this guy right here, the wireless LAN card, that's this guy, and then the D-Link Extreme, that's the other little guy here. So in terms of the 1, 6, and 11, we just make sure these get reset. He's on 11, that's good. And he's on 6, that's good. Oops. Why isn't he available? Okay. Well, we're going to capture on 1 and 6 for now, or 11 and 6.
Does it matter which USB ports you plug those into?
No, it shouldn't. It might matter right now, but it shouldn't matter, and it doesn't normally matter, no. So they can be on any of the USB ports.
I also think it's very cool to make comment on the fact that you can mix your cards.
Yeah.
Your vendor names.
Yeah, well, and that's part of, I mentioned about Atheros being a partner. That's part of that, because we do need the specialized drivers, but it's fortunate that between Atheros and Rayleigh and several of the other vendors that they're either doing the work on our behalf to modify the driver, or we're able to modify the driver, and it does make a number of commercially available devices available, which is great. With these 3-stream devices here, dual band, I mean they're $49, $59. They're pretty cheap, so it makes it real flexible for end users to be able to go find a device.
How do you calibrate between the different vendors so you're getting consistent answers?
The only thing that really needs to be done in terms of calibration is when you start dealing with signal and noise, like those kind of measurements. Otherwise, it's all just timing, right? And since they're all coming back to the same PC, there could be slight differences as timing comes from the driver, but that's usually not an issue. But when it comes to signal strength, when any measurements we're making in OmniPeek that are based on signal strength are based on the RSSI measurements we're getting from the devices. And each of the chipset manufacturers tends to define those RSSI ranges just a little bit different. So we need to work with them to know those ranges for the different types of drivers, and then from then, we can just do that calibration, and we do that inside OmniPeek, where we have a table that kind of calibrates the RSSI for all the different vendors.
Is it possible to do an aggregator between like an adapter that you've got there and a remote EP?
Not capable to do that today. Everything we'd aggregate would be from stuff that was attached here. Now, there's a way of doing it, but and it certainly would work, because we've also tested this as well. I could have an Ethernet connected USB hub somewhere else in the building, and those Ethernet USB hubs make it look like those USB devices are connected here. It's just the way those hubs work. And in that case, I could actually do that. I could capture from somewhere across the building off that Ethernet hub and these, because to OmniPeek it would look like they were all connected locally. But
okay,
that would be the only way. I couldn't, for example, combine capturing from a Cisco AP, for example, with capturing locally. When it comes to our remote adapters, it's one or the other. You're either going to capture from Cisco APs or you're going to capture from locally.
What I typically use, I use it for, I use 4 NICs,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never gone past 4. How many do you support?
So it really ends up coming down to the throughput. I mean, if it was just a BG network, we easily could support 11 USA channels or all 14 international channels. If you were going to use them on 11N and people were really pushing, everybody was on N, greenfield, and you're pushing a lot of bandwidth, then if you're getting up to 600, 700, 800 megabits per second of traffic, but aggregated traffic,
sure, that's
where some of our analysis is going to start to slow down. So, but we have customers that are using it on all 14 channels, for example, in BG. They design these elaborate carts with power supplies on them, and they can wheel them around, and yeah.
Cool.
So we'll do we had the aggregator set on, I kind of lost track where I was, the aggregator set on 6 and 11. And we're not in a view where we can see anything. So we'll go back to that wireless LAN view for a minute, and then again I won't close them all because right from the start, that's all you guys right here. So now, this is a lot busier than it was before. Here's all the people connected to WP10. There's a lot of apples there. So what's up with that? And because I can't, for most of those, I'm not going to be able to resolve DNS, but some of the ones that I know that I was able to assign to, for example, my phone, is up there because I was able to go in through our name table and I know what my MAC address is and I assigned it. So, now we're one layer deeper. We're doing, we're doing our scan and we're able to see, now what all the stations are that are attached, what channel they're on, what encryption is being used, etc. And a little further over in this trust column, this is what we use to identify rogues. So, for example, if I were to look now and say, what's up there, I have all these unknown devices. That's all you guys. And that would appear to us at first as rogues. So, what we would need to do if we determined that that you guys were all trustworthy, we'd start to kind of go in one by one and just assign, at least, maybe you're not trusted, maybe you're known. So, and we just go down the list that way.
Is there any way to do a batch import?
There is not today, and that seems pretty consistent across the industry. What's that?
Can you control click? Like,
Right click?
no, like grab 1, 7,
I
15,
don't
12.
think so.
There you
Ah,
go.
maybe.
Right, shift click.
Yeah, there you go.
Do
Yeah,
it.
you can do it. Can't import them, but you can do that. So you guys are all known. And that makes things a lot clearer when we go down. So then we can go, there's probably going to be a lot of other clients that we're going to see here, but then we can come in and just look for all of the unknowns up here, and it'll just show us where the rogues are. So that kind of helps. There's still a lot of them because there's a lot of devices around here that we don't know, haven't assigned, but pretty quick for determining kind of where the rogues are. So we have a pretty good idea of where we're at, right? And there's some pretty some big users in here, but then we might want to get into something a little more graphical. So we're going to go into our Compass view. And
Real quick, back there, can you fire off alerts if unknown devices are showing up?
so we have an expert for rogues,
Uh-huh.
and I'll show you that in a few minutes. But yeah, from that expert, it will send out log messages, so we can send them to syslog, or we could define alarms and alerts based on that. So every time you saw an expert for a rogue, you would get that.
Gotcha.
So Compass is, it's been around, but we used to ship it as what we called a plug-in, an extension to the product. Now it's baked into the product, and it has some new features for wireless. So what we're looking at in Compass first is, again, utilization up on top, but now graphed over time. And I've never seen a wireless network at WildPackets that heavily used. No one uses. Besides us, no one uses. Though we do everything with wireless, not very many of us are actually wireless. We're all wired at our desk. So a lot of utilization, which is real good. So what we see in Compass is not only the utilization over time. We're able to use this bar right here to zoom in. We can also see the top protocols. And because we are scanning right now, the scanning part does not support you putting in the key, the WPA2 passphrase. So pretty much everything is showing up as encrypted data, and that's why we're not getting much here in the flows. And then we're able to see the top nodes over here. Typically on the laptop, it's a little bit better because it's kind of compressed everything to 800 by 600 for that projector, and it scales just a little bit funny. So that's one of the things that we can see. One of the very neat things in here as well is, besides just throughput, we can see packets if we wanted to. We're measuring latency, which because we're not really capturing the flows, we're not going to get much here on latency at the moment, but we can also do signal. And what's neat about signal is, it might not make sense to see the aggregated signal. And this is where it really gets started to turn things off, because let's not do the total. But let's say we want to follow a particular user. So let's say we want to follow my phone and see what the signal strength is. Well, I'm not sending a lot of packets because it's in my phone and I'm kind of keeping it in my pocket and I'm kind of keeping it quiet. But you can see my signal strength's at 60, 70, depending on where I was. And when we did that, I might have been sitting down when we did that. Other users in the room, we can just kind of hunt and peck around for users, so we can see the signal strength of the users in the room, again as measured from this perspective, from the perspective of the cart. So signal strength is really useful, and it's useful for troubleshooting because typically when you're going to want to look at signal strength is when people are mobile, not when people are just sitting at the table like this. And in that case, we would watch signal strength degrade over time on this graph. We'd watch them reassociate with a new access point and watch that signal strength pick back up. Some pretty useful information there. Along the top, you see here, also new in Compass for 7.0. This is our expert events. I mentioned earlier about that expert analysis that goes on in the background. I don't have my experts well tuned, so I do get a lot of them coming in, but we can highlight an expert area and it'll show underneath and click every time you go over one, somewhat annoyingly, where, we're going to solve that, where they are. So I just froze it for a minute to make it easier, so then we can go down and we can start looking at all the expert events, right? We see we detected what we think is some wireless interference there, not uncommon. Some physical errors here, more physical errors. Scroll across a little bit more, kind of get out of that area. Too many retries. So certainly areas that you would then maybe want to go zoom in on. And one of the neat things about Compass as well is it's easy to go zoom in. You just pick an area. It'll blow up that area. And then if from that area you decide, yeah, I'm in the right area, you can come up to this little area right here where the binoculars are, and it will now link you back into the packets. So now you can have a more complete view. We'll copy just the packets for that very short period of time into its own little buffer, and then we can go into the deep analysis that we want to with the other features in OmniPeek for those packets. So Compass really, as the name implies, it kind of guides you in the right direction from a high-level view down into the product. All right. But hopefully that all kind of made sense. So we just zoomed in on a period of time. We can work with this here for a minute and look at some of the other views. So one of the other areas that is interesting to me is this applications area. And again, because I'm going to start another capture because we were scanning, we're not picking up the apps because a lot of it's encrypted data. So let's close this guy. Let's stop this capture, and we'll do.
You can put the key into decrypt afterwards, but you're saying you can't.
You can, but
not
with the aggregator, because the aggregator doesn't allow you to do that. And I was aggregating two channels together. Right. It doesn't actually pick up the key. But you can if I'd been doing a single channel, which I'm going to go back and do because we know it's all on channel 4, on channel 6. So and we'll just pick one of the adapters. And I have the key in from before. All right, it'll take a few minutes, but we can go back to the wireless LAN view for a minute just to see where everything pretty much still looks the same as before. So I mean, some of the things that we were picking up were the streaming router from these guys back here, from the video. There we go, back into Compass, and you can see what's going on in the room. We see our expert events coming up. You can see where the signal strengths are. So going back into now more out of the dashboards and into OmniPeek itself. Several other approaches. If we didn't like the way the nodes view was there, it was a little bit small. We can go into nodes and protocols and go see what the various protocols are on the web, on the network right now. Mostly encrypted data right now.
Do you have to capture the four-way handshake at association time in order to decrypt the data?
We would, and that's why we're not decrypting most of the people in the room right now. So. And that's always a little bit of an issue, but I mean, it's one of the things, like I mentioned earlier about wireless, right? A lot of times when you're really trying to troubleshoot wireless, you're really trying to troubleshoot the protocol part of it anyway at this time, right? You're not necessarily trying to troubleshoot the application layer part. I mean, you might be, but it's usually not. And if you are trying to troubleshoot that application layer part, it's probably for a particular user or two, and you can get them to unassociate and reassociate, pick up the key, and then be able to decrypt their traffic. So I mean that's kind of the way that typically goes. So I'll open up some capture files instead to show you some of the other things that are in here. So one thing that's also interesting from a use case is this is a capture file that I did several years ago. I think that was February 27th, 2008, happened to be at one of the Wi-Fi Alliance meetings, and big conference room, 300 or 400 people in there. Nobody can connect. Nobody can VPN. Nobody can kind of do anything. So what does a bored individual with OmniPeek running on their laptop do? They start running captures because to see what's actually going on here. So what became evident real quick, it was down in the nodes view, was that. Did I open the right one? Or is it already filtered? Okay, should open this earlier. I don't know where everybody, come right here, sorry. That one device, the one with the MAC address EAC2, was using about 75% of the available bandwidth in the room, or at least all the bytes. And again, I'm talking, there were 300 to 400 people in the room. It made no sense that anything in the room should be taking up 75% of what was there. Just didn't make any sense. So, there's different ways to go look at this, but one of the things would be, one of the great features in the product, right, is just go then, right click, you can go select related packets, do it by source and destination, and because that's a lot of the packets, it's going to go put those in a separate buffer. It's going to take a few minutes. But then the other thing that I started to notice in looking at that user was, because that user was EAC2, they were also all over the map. Look at the channels, right? It's over, 6th column over, 7th column. They're on channel 6, and then channel 11, and then they're in the 8 channels, and all over the place, right? So, one of the other views, I don't know if I said this ahead of time, but to go into our peer map view, and again, we got to go back to physical. And what you started to see was kind of a traditional kind of what looks like a denial of service, right? I mean, in the end, because I didn't have the whole network under my control, right, I couldn't go determine this for sure. But there was certainly a rogue device of some sort, whether malicious or not, that was basically trying to communicate with everybody else in the room. And things like our peer map allows you to see that. And to see it very clearly. So, it took me a few more minutes than that in the conversation to do this, but not many more, to figure out that there was a node there that somebody really needed to go look at. And now, if I'd been the network engineer, with OmniPeek, though, again, we're not a spectrum analyzer, I could have then started to go look at signal strength for that individual, right? Filter everything down to that one individual, and then start looking at signal strength, move around a little bit, kind of the traditional way people even had suggested doing it with spectrum analyzers in the past. Break the room into quadrants, go to the center of 4 quadrants, figure out, where the signal strength is stronger. Do it again, do it again. You'll quickly get to where that device is, whether it's an individual or some rogue device or whatever. So it's a very clear, I think, example of, one of the many excellent uses for using OmniPeek in a wireless environment.
Did you fix it for them?
I did not. But he was very grateful and had a lot of useful information. I did end up giving him an eval copy of OmniPeek so that he would, on the fly, and I think he did go get it solved because people were connecting a few hours later. That's one actually good use case. One of the other areas that's big for us is voice over IP. But in this particular case, it would really be voice over Wi-Fi. So go into a slightly different part of the application here, where we have our voice calls. We can go into look at the calls here that were on the network. This was just a test file that was generated. We see there was one call here. And it was from a soft phone, and I bring it up because then we can see on the media side we can see all of the things that we can see for voice over IP, whether it's voice over IP or voice over Wi-Fi. It honestly doesn't matter. So we can see the details of each side of any one of the calls on the network. So VoFi included. So looking down at the bottom. Lots of details here on things like the R factor, the MOS scores, all of this for any one of the calls, again, whether wired or wireless. You know, very, very detailed information, great for doing troubleshooting for voice over IP or VoFi, you know, pretty much from any perspective. You want to see a little more about the call, you can actually go back to our calls view, double click, and it'll bring up a ladder diagram of that call where we can see everything that happened on that call, right? Anything that's a black line is a setup kind of packet, right? Something that's to do with the protocol, and then we get into the area here where the call is, you know, and we can see what the overall R factor was, what the jitter was, right? And we can see that we certainly had a period in the call where things were not so good, where the jitter jumped up and the R factors dropped down. Again, and if we're, you know, truly interested
Could you
in
graph signal strength to see why someone might have been roaming?
So what we would do then is we would go, obviously we'd go back to that user, and we could see signal strength for that user, because again, all of those same packets are here. And you know, in this particular case, not roaming, but you would be able to see that, right? If it was here, you'd be able to see if there was a dip in signal strength and understand why that was.
But also you have the roaming too, you have the roaming log.
Right.
You should be able to.
Right. No, and again, I don't think we'd show anything in there for this one because I don't think, again, there was any room. I was going to show you that in a minute. So yeah. But one of the other things on voice over IP is even if in the end you're not kind of quite sure what all that means, you know, all these R factors, you know, we can't actually even replay the call. Oops. Playing here. There we go. I'm unmuted. Anyway.
Hello, this is Joe. Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe.
And it plays in stereo.
So I thought I would try the active file rather than.
So useful only if you're not that familiar with VoIP yet, and you're looking at MOS scores, and they're, you know, like those scores were here, right? And it was this MOS scores 3, you know, 3.5. You're not sure what that means. What does that voice quality mean? Or, you know, as we saw, you know, in this view here, we saw there was the area in the middle where there was excess jitter. You might want to, you know, go to the middle of the call and see what that sounded like as well. So it's just an excellent way of really drilling in on voice and video. The other thing with voice and video, again, whether wired or wireless, we also have a call data record where all this information can get exported, so you'll have a full record of each and every call on the network. So, you know, very useful again for that kind of thing. Roaming came up, so let me go look at roaming for a minute. So I have a file for that.
It's kind of interesting about the court's rule that wiretapping. Yeah. And now you're actually wiretapping.
Mm-hmm.
But legally, I guess, suppose, right? Because you can capture
As long as it's on
packets.
Wi-Fi.
Well, I think there's even questions about that. Now, people there are registry settings where that can be turned off because there are customers that don't want even the network engineers to be able to hear the calls. So, you know, we can give, through tech support, the registry settings for somebody to go and turn those off in the product.
Oh, that's cool.
And, you know, as long as the one guy that's trusted knows what that is and turns it off, then, you know, everyone else doesn't know how to go turn it
We
back
also
on.
have a version of OmniPeek Enterprise which doesn't have VoIP playback.
Ah,
So
okay.
that's also manageable.
You can do it with Wireshark and anything else. That's why you do voice VLANs. Restrict it off.
But that does get just to the point of a little snoopy. But I mean, that's the flip side of wireless too, right? I mean, so this is OmniPeek. There are other tools available on the market that are free that, you know, maybe aren't quite as easy to use, but will do the same thing. So, you know, you need to implement all of the other measures behind wireless, right? You need to be using the most secure networks you can, and you just need to be careful about what you do. I mean, I would still never, from travel enough, I'd never go to a hotel room and buy anything over a credit card on any of these wireless networks. I don't care whose network it is. I don't care what it is. I just don't trust anything that much. And you know, you just can't. There's too much going on in that area. So roaming, what we do with roaming is we actually have a roaming log that'll show when we detect somebody transitioning from one AP to another. That's the way this is working today. So, and then we measure the times, et cetera. So this one is just a straight log, but we can also log them by node or kind of even more by access point. So you can get a feel for what is the roaming on those access points. So this was a test file. These are terrible times. No one has 9 seconds of roaming latency on their access points. At least I really hope they don't, because nothing would continue to work. But the roaming analysis module itself is very useful for customers because this is coming all just from the same packet data. So everything else that we're collecting, we're just doing that roaming analysis in the background. So it's going to just do it and stick it here in the log, and you'll be able to see the roaming. And we've worked with several of our customers on this. Aruba, most notably, Aruba is very interested in some of this kind of roaming stuff.
So based on the roaming times, does what does your module look for? Is it the reassociation frame?
So
can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can, and it's something that because it's also an extension, it's something that can be modified, but it takes a developer to modify it. But what we do today is we actually don't do it by the AX. We actually look for the last data packet on the network that the user came from, and the first data packet on the user on the network that they went to. So our times are a little bit longer than what other people might typically measure roaming, because they may look for a reassociation or maybe the ACK after the reassociation or that kind of thing. We actually look for data, figuring that that's part of the delay. I mean, from the user's perspective, I'm trying to send data, but it could be modified. And different customers kind of do want it in different ways. So this is something we're going to work on over time, I think, to try and find, maybe have choices of models, model A, B, C, where people can go do it different ways.
I think both provide valuable input to be able to see how fast your roaming is in terms of your reassociation request, but then also how long did it take for that client to actually initiate data transfer. Again, it would be nice to have that on both columns there and just be able to see, okay, the REAC association was
right.
2 seconds, but data transfer to 9 seconds. It's a
right.
troubleshooting tool.
Right. I think that's what I meant with with kind of the different modes. But you're right. Maybe just having them all on the table, mode A, B, C, and you know what it is, and you see the different times. Yeah, that's real good. So remote analysis is another big area. And actually, just for a second, I wanted to go back to these slides just to show one. It makes it a little bit clearer for a minute. So there's really 3 choices for roaming, one of which I'll show you today. So I mean, for remote analysis, what's really popular with remote analysis today is people kind of doing the middle model, which is this one right here, where we have what we call a remote adapter. They have seen it when I was in the capture options, and we ship the product with a remote adapter for Aruba and a remote adapter for Cisco. Other remote adapters are very easy to write. Once you have one, the model is pretty much the same for all the different AP manufacturers. And what this does is it does rely on either a central controller or an individual ability through LWAP or something like that to put an access point in promiscuous mode or in sniffer mode. And Cisco allows you to do that, Aruba allows you to do it. They pretty much all allow you to do it, usually through the web UI. Go in, click it in sniffer mode, give it a channel, and there's a spot to put in a IP address. Put in the IP address of OmniPeek and start a remote capture on OmniPeek, and all of those packets come back into OmniPeek, and you can analyze them just like you were doing a local analysis. The only drawback with it, and so some real big advantages, right? Because now I can be kind of anywhere in the world and analyze something quite far away. Doesn't really matter. The only drawbacks being that it's going to send the packets back over the wired network because there's no way for me to analyze them locally. We have an option to do that, but this isn't one of them. And it will take that access point, at least in the case of Aruba and Cisco, offline once you put it in sniffer mode. Now, there's usually enough overlap design in wireless networks that you can do that, but not always. And if it was one like here, right, now we're having problems in this room, well, you guys are all on the same access point. So if I take that one offline, kind of a problem, because now I can't analyze it. If we had another one nearby, that's great, even if it was on a different channel, because then we could put that one in sniffer mode and see everything that's going on this access point. So it requires a little bit of forethought, but it's an excellent way to be able to do remote analysis, because that gear is already deployed. It's already there. It's free to you to be able to go do captures on.
Any word on being able to connect directly to the radio servicing clients and pull packets directly out of the radio buffer?
We'd still have to pull the packets back across, though, right?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how that's necessarily different from what we do today.
The radio wouldn't have to be offline.
The radio wouldn't have to be offline. It's different. But
Yeah.
if you were to attach to directly to an AP and pull it, you would see an AP's perspective.
Oh,
of
right,
those
right,
packets.
right. Now,
That's actually what I was about to say too, because Aruba has written drivers currently for other products, free ones, that allow you to basically capture all of the packets that are coming through the AP and copy them off to them, so you can actually see all of what the client has negotiated and when it's decrypted on the AP.
right, then I'm sure there's really no difficulty in doing that. Actually, I think the way it works today, I think our remote adapters today, though you control it through the controller and tell it to go into sniffer mode. Once it's in sniffer mode,
I'm talking about servicing clients, not
Yep.
not in sniffer
It's
mode.
the AP is
okay.
actually servicing clients, and you're able to capture all of that client's communication
right,
with that
right.
AP into a
Right.
buffer.
I've done it.
yeah, I'm sure.
I have done it with this program.
Yeah, I'm sure we'd be able to do it. Yeah.
You know,
So what vendors are supported?
it doesn't take it offline. but the-
So right now, Aruba and Cisco, and we've worked with Maru, and we have an adapter for them. That one is still something that somebody would need to download from our community portal. And we've worked with Xeris, so there's 4 of them that are out there. Like I said, once you do one, and once one's done, it's essentially the same thing from AP to AP. Very, very, very similar. So that's the remote adapter side of things. What's become more common is actually people willing to put an appliance like that are appliances typically used for wired captures. Racking it up in an area where there's a lot of wireless, putting USB adapters on it, and letting it run 24/7. It's certainly a more expensive way to go, but we have customers, most notably one. It's in the mercantile exchange area, so kind of similar to what Monty was describing earlier about Bet365, but it's on the trading side of things, where everything that goes on the trading floor is wireless. They don't want to lose any of that data. They want to be able to analyze it, but also archive it. So they buy an appliance that's got a reasonable amount of disk space in it. They start the wireless captures. They leave it run 24/7. They just put our captures in a capture to disk mode, and they have a recording of all of the trades for some period of time, whether it's a day or 2 or 4, whatever they can squeeze into that appliance. Becoming a more popular method, even though somewhat more expensive, because they have that archive capability, the 24/7 capability, and in that case, all the analysis does get done remotely. So we're not sending any packets back across the network. They're all captured locally on that appliance, analyzed, it's all done. And then lastly, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, and I'll show this through OmniPeek, we have this OmniPeek Remote Assistant, which is that ability to email to somebody a very thin little client and allow even a non-technical user to be able to capture packets, whether wired or wireless. So let me jump back out of here. And I do think that, I'm going to clean this up. I mentioned earlier that I was running a relatively new version of OmniPeek. One thing I do need to do is, before I run the OmniPeek Remote Assistant, is close it. Shouldn't need to do that. I should be able to run the Remote Assistant and OmniPeek at the same time on my machine, but that is not working right now. And I spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out why and cannot. But the way it works is we go into Tools and oops, not Customize, Tools and Options. And we see down here ORA groups. And this is where we start an OmniPeek Remote Assistant group. So there's always a default. I can start my own groups. I'll show you how it works. To do one, do a new ORA. We'll do a new ORA group. I don't know if I use 2, 3, whatever. There we go. Click OK. And it's really that simple. It's already created a zip file for me. Right, it's thrown it in here. It just wants me to put it somewhere. So I just know what I'm doing with that. I'm going to put it in here. Okay, it's ready, it tells me. So I will close OmniPeek. Oops. the Windows versus. And then you can see where it created that. There's that jj3.zip. So basically what it does is it creates a zip file that has the OmniPeek remote assisted executable, at about 200 kilobytes, and then everything underneath it that's needed, including even a little quick start guide if the end user really kind of needs to understand what it is and needs a little more guidance. But typically it's going to be quite easy to use. So the one thing I hadn't done there was extract it. Let me extract
Now
it.
you're making some assumptions. You're making an assumption that the wireless card's going to be supported too, right?
Right. Again, like I said, it's for wired and wireless. So in a lot of cases, people are using it for wired, which is okay because pretty much anything that's in the device is supported. Wireless, a little bit trickier, right? They're going to need to have a supported device.
How,
Right?
how do you need to push them a unique, that customized driver?
So they would need to have the driver and a device.
So I mean, one it has to have a supported device, but then how for this ORA would you push out that extra driver?
So today, the user would need to install that driver, but the next version, or we're looking into on the roadmap for this, is for part of running it to be able to go install the driver if it recognizes that there's a supported device there, but not the supported driver.
But you could, along with this, just ship out the.
You could and have them do that, right. The issue right now is we're never sure what device people are going to have. We could put all the drivers on there. Part of it was we were also trying to keep this small, but we could put the drivers on there, sure, and pump them out as well.
It's just as an admin, I could make a little kit before I sent this out someplace.
You could add it in, sure, because it's just a zip file. You could even just go in and modify that zip file and throw in the drivers for that user. Yeah.
Does the zip file, when you install it, require administrative rights on the end user's machine?
You're not installing, you're just running.
Yeah.
It's just going to run, it's not going to install?
Yeah, it's just going to run.
You would need admin rights to install the custom driver.
That's what I was thinking.
Right, for the driver you might, right.
So-
But this will just run. Yeah. So, and it's really kind of that simple. We bring it up, right? It's got a, you can see my local area connections, the wireless connections that were on here. If I decide to choose, and it even does the aggregation, I could go choose to set that one on channel 1, and then pick my other wireless and put it on channel 6, etc. And then there's nothing else the end user needs to change unless directed by the network administrator. Maybe they wanted the rollover size for the files to be a little larger, or maybe they want the user to really know where they put these. So maybe we don't want to put them there. Even for me, maybe I don't, because maybe I want to be able to keep track of them later. But pretty straightforward. Otherwise, it's just going to run. So click start. It just starts capturing packets. And if it gets over 100 megabytes, it'll start a second file, third file. It's just going to go do this, and then.
Now, that'd be better if it was on a Mac. Nice.
And that question, even for this small executable, that question already came up from a customer. Was again, what if I send it to a Mac? I'm sorry. Head hung low again because of the Mac question. But anyway, so stop.
Oh, do not even.
And then the user would just send those files back. So let's see if we can go. We'll see if we can go find those. So I think they went in. I think it just went in my documents. That's 2011. I'm going to do this often enough.
While you're looking for that, will you be covering forensics at all?
We can. It doesn't really fit so much on the wireless topic, but we certainly can. I wasn't paying attention to where I put them. That one looks like it. So then, just as the analyst, because I'm the guy that generated them, I should be able to double click, and it should just go back into OmniPeek and open them up. Now, while it's doing that, the other thing about it is, you notice I could start those different ORA groups. Part of the reason there were different groups was because every group can have its own public-private key pair. So, like for example, a couple of different examples. Number one, like Cisco uses it today, and they're dealing with a lot of their own independent customers. So they really want a different encryption key every time they send one out to a different company. If they're going to send out to different people in the same company, maybe they'll use the same key, but it's only different companies, different keys. So it keeps everybody's data very private. If it's just using internally, maybe you just use the same key, and it really doesn't matter to OmniPeek or anything else. So, of course, we're still on that roaming module, but you can see the packets that I captured there. You know, the compass maybe and look at it there. So, you know, we can see exactly, pretty straightforward, real handy for customers. I think it's something people are going to find handy. You know, what we found was going on in the industry was there were still a lot of people kind of struggling with trying to use Wireshark to do that, and especially to send it to a non-technical user, it's really just a bit intimidating to try and install that and then figure out what to do with running it and everything else. So this will, I think, really help a lot of the help desk applications.
I think one thing that you could, if you could do to make it a little bit of an easier process as well, even as what you just shown as you were going through looking for your file, is instead of giving the user the options to select where they want to save it, if as an administrator, when I roll out that ORA package, allow us to be able to put in like a Dropbox credentials and have a small Dropbox API or app built into that, so that you can automatically save that data up into who's got the blanket? A cloud file storage system. So that we can
or Dropbox. Yeah. No, that's excellent.
You know, whatever.
Somewhere, put it somewhere on a centralized.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, because that does make it that much easier. The user doesn't need to touch them again. They don't need to email them or do anything.
Email somebody. A lot of our email servers, they're just going to kick this out and.
Yeah, even if it's zipped or it's whatever. Yeah.
Especially if it's.
If it's zipped, yeah.
But it'll take a nice text file that's 100 megs, you know.
Right. Yeah, no, you're quite right. That's a great idea. Because we struggle with that ourselves as well in support all the time. We're trying to send people with drivers, and I don't know, 5 attempts, different renamings and different extension names and things to get it through. Yeah. And some email servers will tell you that it got dropped, and some emails they won't tell you anything at all. It's just the whole mail gets dropped. Right. Yeah. So, right.
Is it currently scriptable in any way?
This utility?
Exactly, to make it completely non-interactive, for example.
No, the utility itself is not scriptable, but our group that wrote it could easily modify it to do that, or on a case-by-case basis, we could make that source available. Maybe even if somebody could modify it, but it's not scriptable directly.
We like scripts.
The rest of the product is quite scriptable, but this particular module does not wind up scriptable. But kind of mentioning that real quick, extensibility was one of the things that I had also wanted to cover. So let me just real quickly go there. So one of the things that we have about compatibility, we do talk about Wireshark sometimes. So we have MyPeek, the MyPeek community portal, and for any anybody can come register for the portal, and then any user under maintenance has full access to everything in the portal. But the biggest thing are look at some of the resources, the developer documentation. I didn't log in. Yeah, forgot about that earlier.
We're hoping you'd show this.
Oh God, and then and my use of passwords is so secure, as is probably most people's. So in terms of resources, developer documentation, all of that's right in here. On the script reference, that's our scripting reference to be able to control our engines. We have a plugin API for the engines, a plugin API for OmniPeek to be able to generate all the kind of extensions that we have there. Where most people would probably start would be with decoders, the decoder language reference. It's pretty easy to write a decoder. It still scares people away, but it's actually quite easy to write a decoder. But the nice thing about the product is it is all extensible and it's all kind of here. And if people are looking for existing examples, they can come into things like the plugins. In some cases, we'll offer source for the plugins, and in many cases not. But there's a lot of examples of plugins that are here that have already been written by our custom engineering group. So the extensibility and the developer community is really quite open to us.
Do you have to be registered as a developer to actually get access to those, or?
So to get to the developer documentation, I think that's behind the maintenance side. So you need to be under maintenance for. But now you guys all are leaving with an eval copy of OmniPeek on the flash drive. If you want access to any of this, there's also something on the flash drive that has all of our credentials. Just email me, and I can change your status inside MyPeek once you register. at the basic level, and you can have access to anything that you want inside of MyPeek. It's really quite easy and encouraged.
And just to note real quick, the eval copy that's on the USB is 6.8. When SFMO comes available, we'll send you guys that as well.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
So that was lo-fi roaming. One other thing that I wanted to mention also, back in the product, sorry to bounce around a little bit. One other thing that's quite important, especially nowadays, and with a product like OmniPeek, you can do this, is the ability to compare kind of wired and the wireless side of a network. See things like retransmissions and those kinds of things. So one of the things that's open to us is to be able to do that. So an example of that here. So what I've done is there's an Ethernet side and a wireless side of a capture that went on kind of simultaneously. So you can go into our right now we're in the packet visualizer, which shows timing, a little more geeky looking than some of the other things that I've shown you. But we can do this compare where it'll bring up this ability to choose a file on the right-hand side. So I already have the Ethernet file open. I can go open the wireless file, and now it will tag IP IDs from one file to the other, so we can see things very quickly, like retransmissions, how often they're happening, where they're happening. So it's kind of very handy, very quick to just be able to go do that with that compare feature.
And to run that, you just need to have a wireless NIC. You can do this after the fact with the
This is done. It's something that's done post capture, right? So you'd save from both sides and then do the compare.
Is it timestamp based? I mean, how do you synchronize the two?
It's their timestamps would be similar, but they're IP ID based. So we're going to just track by the IP ID of the individual packets. So it should be consistent.
So you must be running the decode on the wireless side.
A decode.
Yeah,
decrypt.
Running a capture, right, and decoding on the
Yeah, I mean, because.
We're decrypting it on the wireless side. We're running a capture, and we have the key in.
So what do you do if you have some 802.1x and you don't have access to the decrypt key?
Well, isn't the IP ID still going to be in the header where we can see that?
No, it's in the encrypted part.
Well, then I think in that case, then we won't be able to do the compare. Yeah. That was mostly on the wireless side. On forensics, do you want to talk about that for a second, Monty, and then I'll kind of see if I can get something queued up here.
I got one last question on this.
Sure, yeah.
So a lot of this seems to be beneficial for possibly sending out from getting this remote data, using the ORA, and then having somebody else analyze that data. How are you licensing this? So if I'm just looking to view and look at this data, if I'm doing when I purchase the software, if I get a license key that then is attached to this software application, it's not attached to like any MAC addresses, any dongle card, any adapters. So I can roll that software through team members as need be.
Right. So the licensing for OmniPeek itself is tied to the machine that you install it on, not to dongles or anything, but to the machine you install it on. So it would be tied to, we hash together some information from the machine, right, and it then gets locked in when you come back, to our server, the registration server. We record that, and then that's where it's logged. So anybody can come and use that laptop, but it is tied to that asset.
How do you control for releasing that so that I can move it to another laptop? Do you have limits on how many times I can do that? Do you have to call your support?
With a single license, you can install it twice, but people come back and call support all the time and say, can you repurpose my license?
Do you have an automated process through a portal where I can just click a button that says release it?
Not today. No.
So you don't have any sort of like consultant-based license where you could have a team of consultants sharing a license, basically?
We do sell, or we do have site licenses that you can install for 25 licenses, 100 times, etc. But one copy, basically you can install it on 2 different machines unlimited times.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the default. But we do have site licenses for large groups.
How large would the groups normally be?
We can just set it
You just set it according to how many people that they want to use for that site?
It's the serial number, and the way the activation server works, we can just assign that serial number to whatever number of installs we want.
Okay.
So Jay, do you have an engine that you're
I hadn't really prepared for the forensics. I have a local engine that we could start capture on.
You have some .11u frame captures?
Yeah, I'd like to see that more.
I would like to see
that.
I want to see the .ACs.
ACs, U's, W's, whatever.
I'll open them up. Let's see. So, yeah.
What NIC did you use?
So in some of these cases, we get the packets from somebody else, like a Cisco or something like that. So I don't know what NIC was used, and odds are they may have been going.
You can analyze, but you can't capture AC. Or
yeah, that is correct right now. We can analyze AC, but we do not have
So if we have contacts with Cisco, we can also analyze.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the ways to do it. So and it's not available yet, but we're actually also working with. A company in Fremont who's targeting AC basically, and they're targeting it for the home market, but they're also going to have a line of APs, and we're working with them to develop a remote adapter for their AP, so that at least you could use that AP to capture 211 AC traffic. And for now, that's probably about the best we can do. There aren't very many client devices that are out there that are USB attachable that we're going to be able to use for 11 AC. I mean, in these cases like AC, it's not like I don't have a bazillion different, kind of packets that are, so here we go.
How about a frame that shows STBC turned on?
I don't know if I have that. But so it's in this area where we're doing a lot of that 11AC decode. And again, this was, I can't remember if we captured this or somebody else did. The name is pretty clear. As a Broadcom 11S station attaching to a NIC here 11AC router, and we can see because of that, right, a lot of it wasn't supported. But you get a feel for is our ability to kind of list this right and show what we would be able to decode in this for 11AC. I mean, a lot of this stuff is pretty new. I'll be honest with you guys, and everyone's on the camera as well, right? When it comes to this kind of stuff, like all these new ones, like U and W and stuff, it's hard. What we start with is the spec, right? We try to write a decode based on the spec, and we do the very best we can with that, and then we try to find packets, where we can, or generate them ourselves. Generating some of these is very difficult nowadays. There's not really decent equipment out there to go generate a whole different types of U frames, and it's extremely difficult to generate specific kinds of frames because most devices don't allow you that level of control. It's really becoming quite tricky. I had a long conversation with Craig Mathias about this yesterday from the Farpoint group, kind of saying the same thing. He's saying that this is all getting kind of very far afield, where it's getting it's more and more dispersed. It's getting very hard to even know what these different frames might look like from all of these different things, or at least what all the different types of frames that might be able to be generated. There's all kinds of optional features and everything else. It does get pretty tricky, so we're trying to do the best we can.
Do the device manufacturers not work with you to help you be able to recognize those frames?
Oh, they will. I mean, like I said, some of the other captures, some of the other packet captures that we have here came from Cisco. I mean, they're trying real hard to work with us on it. But even for them, I've seen guys from other companies like that send me packets, right? And then a few guys are copied on it, and they'll start an internal debate about, how it's supposed to be interpreted, and differences of opinion even internally about those. It's a spec, right? And it's engineers, and it should be one of those things where it's clear, but it's still open to interpretation, and people interpret it differently. Getting complicated, but anyway, this is an example of where we're at with AC. Everything under that very high throughput capability is AC based. You can see the spatial streams that are there, up to the 8 spatial streams. The channel width, in that case 80 megahertz. to.
Jay, what are the chances you sharing that capture with us?
Yeah.
Since I don't know where it came from,
that's even better. They're really
it does make it easier. Yeah, I'm sure I could share that with you guys. I mean, because I'm pretty sure this is something that we did. Because we did buy an 11 AC router at one time, but one of the first ones that came out, and the fact that it doesn't have an AC client.
Yeah, there's the clients and
yeah.
an NSJ though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can. But he made a note for me to send that because I would not remember. Thank you.
We'll just give you thumb drives. Don't worry about it.
Well, yeah, if I could magically get it on your thumb drive right now, that would be great, but I can't. So that was AC. That's good on the list here.
It's too bad the thumb drives aren't wireless.
Yeah.
Right. I fact no.
We did. So we have several different captures for K.
Actually can do Jet approach.
Absolutely.
We want to have one with the line. Just look at some. We're on the same network, right? Let me see if I can get it. Just do it. It turns out we all have to
Said it was a response in action back when we did the other one.
No. It's my car's for good.
So you guys do all your programming in-house, or you guys go overseas with it, or?
Here,
Mostly,
yeah,
yeah.
mostly here. We have some engineers in East Coast, and we have someone in Europe for decoders, but it's mostly here.
So one question about the 802.11w support is, I know that that's encrypting some of the header frames and that are being sent between the APs. Does that make this much more complicated to interpret the data with that turned on?
It does make it more complicated. At first, I think for W, what we're only going to have is something that, as long as it's not encrypted, it will work. We would need to define an additional mechanism underneath for it to be able to put in keys or credentials or whatever, or get that out. And that's not yet built in. So right now it would be only in the cases where the other protections were in place, but not encryption. Because those other protections, right, they can also be as part of W. I don't even know where we're going to see things in here for you. These were all probe requests.
Beacon should be interesting with you.
Let's go back and forward. So you see we put some experts on there.
802.11u support's coming in 8, right?
You see the SSID?
Yes.
So,
yeah,
there's a decode for it in 7, but again, out of any of them, 11U is the one we've had extremely difficult on getting packets from folks. Just doesn't seem like a lot of people.
Talk to Ruckus tomorrow. Let's probably get some.
Ruckus?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, Cisco as well, right?
Cisco.
Yeah.
But that's Friday.
Yeah, we've been talking to Cisco.
It's encouraged them.
Yeah.
There you go.
Wow, yeah, right.
That's right.
CWMP rules.
Yeah.
Good old Marcus. Tom, you seeing this? Look in the
Gee, wonder
decode
where that
section.
came from.
The SSID.
SSID.
CWMP rules.
Yeah.
Well, we know where that one came from.
Big dog in the park.
I reckon that 2.0H is like HS 2.0, just a coincidence. Just missing the letter.
Now, I know we didn't take these for 11U. So we wouldn't have done a one wire trip. Let's see. Not much to see there.
Sam. So the capture part of that there was Cisco dash open.
So what?
It had Cisco open.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
Okay, no idea where that one came from. Cisco proprietary.
Finish specific system.
Oh, wow, interesting. It's a W capture.
So all these decodes will be in 7 when you get them. So also interested in any feedback you guys have. If you plug them into things and find things that don't work, we most certainly want to know.
Okay.
And whenever you can send packets along with a report that something isn't working, that really helps. Or a screenshot. But
Is there Windows 8 support in it?
mine ran on Windows 8.
It ran on Windows 8,
Yeah.
you haven't really tested it on.
I have it on my tablet, my Windows 8 tablet.
Yeah, so it's,
It's running.
It's not supported in this release yet.
but it runs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But if you call tech support and with issues on Windows 8, they will tell you to install a support OS. But I'm sure you will.
But they'll say it. They'll say it in a very friendly way.
Yes, they say it in a very friendly way. So it's basically now 2003, 2008 XP Windows 7 that we support.
So Miami have some engine files somewhere.
You're trying to show
Forensics, yeah. It's gonna take me a second to find files.
So for the forensic searches, so basically all the analysis and everything is being done on the engine. So what we do, we set up a forensics capture, which is basically the capture to disk. So we are basically capturing everything we can, write it to disk. And then you can either start a forensic capture while we are capturing, or you can stop the capture and start your forensic search. We have some predefined templates that you can use depending on what you're looking for. For example, if it's voice over IP, we have a predefined template for VoIP. We have one if you're just interested in statistics. If you're interested in expert events, we have a template. And then we have a customized one, which you basically can pick exactly what analysis options you want in your forensic search. Then you can do basically set a time frame that you want to do your search on, and apply filters, different filters, and then start your forensic search. So the forensic search and all the analysis is being done on the engine. When the search is done, you see the results in your OmniPeek. And after that, it's basically exactly like what you saw on OmniPeek. You have all the views, depending on the analysis option you pick on your forensic search criteria. You see all those options in your OmniPeek, and then you can drill down to the packet level, see the protocols and all the things that Jay showed you. So what we are doing here is basically we are trying to connect to an engine, and after you connect to the engine, you use OmniPeek as a UI to basically set up your forensic search criteria and start your search. If you want, if that's not working, I can go ask QA for engine.
No, I was trying to connect to my own, which was probably
Yeah.
which was probably a problem. I should just try to connect to Stage. Okay, I think I'm
So do you guys have a testing community at all, or do you guys kind of just test internally? How do you guys approach that?
We do test internally. For our QA department, obviously they do test everything, and then we have our sales engineers that they also do testing. We have some large customers that we work very closely. When we get close to the releases, you know, we send them the beta. Sometimes we have a large beta program, sometimes we have a small beta program really focused on the new features we are introducing, sending it to the, you know, customers that they're willing to
Right.
work with us to actually do some testing for us and give us feedback. So really outside of the company is the beta programs that we run before the release to get the feedback, but we don't have a QA outside of the company or the community to do. So this is a timeline view. So basically, when you're doing the forensics capture, which we are capturing to this, we show the network utilization with the top nodes and top protocols, and then here is where you can actually start your forensic search from. Select the time range like here, and then you can go to the forensic search and pick the different forensic search templates.
Connection to this box is very slow.
Hoping to do.
It's not that far away. It's just it's just down the
It's
hall.
right here. So I think if you click on the arrow, it will show you the templates. So you can either do a customized one, pick whatever analysis option you're looking for, set the packet size, bytes, and the buffer, create different filters, and then set the start time and end time, and start your forensic search.
If you're doing a forensic analysis of a packet where the window of view that you're looking at didn't capture the association handshake, does it go grab the data that it needs if you're trying to get application layer data so that you're not just looking at encrypted packets all day long? Like if you're looking for something from a client that was associated at 8 o'clock this morning, but your window of view is 9 to 10, and the client hasn't reassociated, so you don't have the four-way handshake, will it go back and grab the four-way handshake so that it can decrypt the packets from the view later?
You have to have the packets captured in that file or in that capture session. If it's
In
not
the session
captured,
you're viewing?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's not captured, or if it's overwritten, because sometimes when we start capture, you have an
Gotcha,
option
yeah.
to overwrite.
Yeah.
If it's overwritten and the capture is not there anymore, we can't really do anything.
go back
We
there,
have
okay.
we have to have data saved.
You're right.
In the disk.
We'd have to have that key somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah.
So basically
we
here,
just went and searched, yeah.
when you get the forensic search results, after that it's exactly like the OmniPeek UI we showed you. You have all the analysis options, and then you can just go to different views and
Right,
do
and
your analysis.
I had filtered on DNS just to make it
Yes.
easier, so we've got back just the DNS packets from that particular time range. I mean, the forensic search just makes it easier to search over a range of files. So if you're doing that capture to disk and you're capturing data over a long period of time, it allows you to do that. Compass will do something similar where we can bring a bunch of files together into Compass, and you can get an aggregated view of all of it in Compass, and then zoom in on an area, and also go and get the packets for just that area.
So does it actually stream it from the forensics engine to the local console, or are you actually downloading the data that you're selecting directly from that forensic console?
You know, all of that analysis stays local to the engine, right?
Yes,
and then
all the
and all we do is
analysis.
bring back the data to display here on OmniPeek. So here we just brought back metadata to fill this screen.
Okay, and then if you were drilling down into an actual looking at the packets from a particular session, it would just grab just those packets you're looking at?
Right, and actually it would still even just send back just the view. Like for example, if we go into the packets view here, it still didn't send back the packets yet. It just sent back the view to make this packets. To make the view. And if we double click on a packet, now it just sent back the data for that packet.
Okay,
So it really stays like to a 10 to 15 kilobit per second kind of connection pretty much at all times. I mean, the only time that wouldn't happen is if all of a sudden you said you wanted to go, save the packets locally. If you went to save packets and you wanted to bring them down, then it would bring back all the packets.
Could you do a quick demo of this room, the channel that we're on, and give us how would you judge the health of the Wi-Fi in this room?
Quick, everybody close your browsers.
Yeah, could we not do that? Rocky, I thought we talked about
Rocky
this.
getting uneasy.
He sat back there so the camera is in front of him.
That's right.
Let's do a capture to this, Jason, we can look at
So we can look at it afterwards. Yeah.
My upload is just finished.
If we can put in the key, then we can reassociate.
Yeah, we're not gonna see too much anymore for that.
Well, the key's
for that
already in
reason,
there.
so.
I reassociated earlier and it started
I know,
encrypting all the stuff.
But it's not, it's a new
Oh,
key.
really?
Still in the cap.
But he should be able to
What's his thing?
the 57. That's already.
Here, I'll go ahead once he's good
Yeah,
to go.
that's about.
There.
Oh, he's got to start.
As we
Wait
zero-
for it. Okay.
So I mean, there's several. So we'll go back to the wireless LAN views, just so we, we're kind of in the right area. I mean, there's several things to go and look at, and a lot of it we can see even from this view, right? So I mean, who wouldn't think it would be an issue in this room, and it's not. Certainly from a signal strength point of view, everybody's signal strength is quite good, right?
Can you change that to dB instead of percent?
Maybe DBM.
Oh,
yeah.
Next to the DBM, yeah.
So current signal DBM.
Right.
And now you got to remember, there's math in here, right? Because we're only getting our SSI, right? So,
Right.
These aren't spectrum analyzer chips. They're not a highfalutin they're reporting RSSI. So we do some math and get as close to dBm as we can. And it all seems pretty reasonable. Having done some RF in the past, those numbers seem reasonable given what the power would be transmitted from those devices. But I wouldn't put it at plus or minus 1 dBm. So in that area, that looks good. I mean, if we were to go back to Compass, right, and say, what does the throughput looks like? The throughput all looks quite good. So again, without the keys, we're able to assess the kind of the wireless performance, right?
CRCs.
So,
And where's the retries?
so we should be able to get a graph.
It's in the drop-down list of Compass, right?
No, there's not in there, but there are in the graphs area. I believe we can graph physical errors, reassociations, and if not, we can go decide what we want to graph. So
Are physical errors retries or are they CRCs?
those are not CRCs. But we can see. So we go back to we want to see CRCs and get a way to graph this later. But if we go back into the package view, we'd be able to see in the flags any of the CRC errors. So looking here, CRC errors are going to be in red and with a C. So if we turn it back on here, so that it automatically scrolls. We're not, we're seeing a few here and there, but not a lot of CRC errors. And like I said, I could only pull that out and create a graph for CRC errors. So I mean, it doesn't look to me like there's a lot of issues with the wireless in the room. But I don't know if people are experiencing problems with wireless in the room.
Pulling a 0.17 downward.
I might be helping that right now.
You have something there?
Yeah. Look for the Apple device. That's the one causing the issues.
Unplugged it.
Oh.
I wanted to see this is legit.
You wanted to see the performance, so I was looking to see if it was going to pick up what this does to it.
What'd you turn on?
So if we went,
I wasn't looking, did it stop?
So we should synchronize cell phones.
I mean, one of the things that we should be able to see from Compass is if there were lots of, if it was detecting RF interference or those types of things, and I suspect it was if he was turning on a device. Again, that's one area where we're not a spectrum analyzer, right? So, if you're trying to figure out if there's noise, and it does, unfortunately, the one bug right now that exists in the driver that we have from Raylink, if we go back into the packets view and we look at the noise column, let's go over. I think they're all going to say 100. They don't have noise in here.
No, it was already behind you.
Was it behind? Signal flags.
I don't see noise, no.
So noise is at 100%, because this is the one outstanding bug in that Raylink driver, which they know about and they're fixing for us. So that part makes it a little hard because I couldn't tell you whether or not it was noise from his, and not being a spectrum analyzer, I can't tell you any more than that. Now, if we had an atherospace one, noise would be working, and we would see the noise go up. I mean, we do also have an area.
So could you just show what's the retry rates? I mean, I'm still confused between what's a physical error and a retry rate. I mean, it's a term you put on the screen, but I didn't know what it meant. Physical error.
So one way for us to figure that out, let's go into.
Let's click on it first. Let's see what it's giving.
What on the graphs for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had it up.
There's
So
retries at the very bottom.
Yeah.
Wireless retries.
Yeah, there we go. I knew it was in there somewhere.
So what's it?
You're a smart guy.
Yeah.
And those are.
Why don't you combine them both on the same graph?
That's cool.
Keith, are you getting at that like physical is more of a CRC?
I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it might be a CRC, but.
I gotta find it in the list anyway.
Physical.
Can we enter E for
Yeah.
expert? All the way
There
down.
it is.
Second one.
Is that the AP?
There's one for the client, there's one
Oh.
for the AP. And these are in actual counts, not in percentage?
These are in counts, yeah.
Oh, well, that's why.
So the physical errors is
Right,
barely
so
going to
it
register.
just barely
No,
Yeah,
the
you
physical
need to
is
grab
for
it.
the AP, not for the client.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you need, yeah.
You have to put it
Oh,
for the
yeah.
client.
Well, you can see a little bit and showing up
Yeah,
now.
the red apple.
Interesting.
Hey.
Even so, it was only showing like
Yeah, there's only
Yeah,
very
yeah.
few. You can,
Yeah.
There's just little tiny scales.
little tiny bumps all the way at the top.
Very small percentage.
Everything else on over there?
No.
No?
Okay.
Are you looking to generate
It's
some
on the
errors?
table.
No, I just.
Oh.
Let's put it on and see
It's
if
Blake's
it changes.
department.
I mean, it's alright.
If it's strong enough, you should kick everybody off.
I'm getting
What channels are
a
they?
terrible result.
On what? What?
Point
The camera?
0.05
Six.
download speed.
I turned it to 6.
So
Smoke.
something's causing it in the air, and it's just trying. That's why I
Right.
keep looking at Blake over here.
I'm just looking at the spectrum right now. I'm not doing anything with this thing.
Hey, what do you see in the spectrum?
Did you?
Oh,
would-
hot.
Because it would take out, it would take out the whole thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that would-
you
that
get
would-
the spectrum going too. So.
Yeah. George, what are you downloading?
I got a real jammer. That's what makes that happen.
Yeah, that's what it, yeah.
Yeah, turn that off so we don't kill our feet. We all have those.
But now it's interesting though. That dipped down.
Yeah, look at the dip down there.
Yeah.
Maybe because
Do you know why
there's
it
no,
dipped down?
there's just so much
There's
noise.
just
you
so
can't
so much
discern-
noise that
discern
there's no
the-
packets
yeah.
in the
No
air.
packets,
No
yeah.
packets in the air. They can't get hurt.
Yeah.
So there's no retries.
There's George. We're behaving on this side of the table. It's interesting though.
Mhm.
Is there a way to show that in a percentage rather than the raw count? You have lots of statistics though. Very impressive.
I don't like how you can combine things together.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of with the graphic. So
Yes.
lines, bars. I don't think we can actually. We can change the scale, but I don't think we can change the percentage that I'm aware of. Is it? I don't know.
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
the difference
Well,
between
they,
pay version
you could
and free
select the
version.
unit,
It's always
the
different.
unit,
The
but I
units,
don't
if
know
it
if
has-
you could
Not
change.
the person
This
who's
is a really good metric
Wire
to
sharp
check
versus
health.
wire sharp.
What, can you change,
Percentage.
well, no, changing
And the fact that it's a pain in the
Yeah, normally, if it's well, I think if there are different units, you can put it in, they would show up. But I've still certainly never seen percentage. It's
Well,
usually
just
the
some of the
packets
other
or
ones have
bytes or-
percent on them, like
Yeah.
4-port utilization, they're in percent.
Yeah.
Well, what would you,
Well, because
count
utilization
enough
is the only,
packets?
because, right, utilization, the reason anything with the utilization has a percent is because we can assign you know, an overall throughput to the link, 100 megabits per second, 10 megabits per second, and then by doing that, we have a direct comparison. But for these, for the retries, compare it against.
Of the packets you captured, what % of those were retries?
Yeah, but at that exact same time, and what time interval around it, I mean, it gets.
You'd have to do that at the end of the capture. Rather than as
Yeah,
it's
I'm not sure how you would do it real time. You'd have to put like a sliding window maybe and say, okay, now I'm seeing, you know, in the last 5 seconds, I'm seeing this many retries out of this many packets, but you'd have to give it a time interval.
And then every second taken, how many do we get this second?
That's something that Wi-Fi Analyzer does, isn't it? It gives you a retries.
Yeah. And then I just use it all the time, and so I was just looking for it.
Any other questions or? No, pretty much up on the 5 o'clock. Or?
Can you drop down in your graph menu again? When you were doing it, it looked like you had a lot of other Wi-Fi type
the
choices
to add.
Oh, in terms of adding down here.
Yeah.
In terms of the edit.
Yeah, you looked like there's lots of them to play with.
Oh, there's lots. Yeah, I can show you this in a better view. I see what you're asking. It's really here in this stats view. Stats. Here's stats. So it's basically everything that's in this view. Can be graphed. Can be interesting files.
Yeah, that's lots of detail.
And if there's any statistics you want, like, you know, the one you were talking about, percentage, we could write a plugin to generate that as a new stat, and then you can then graph it. And that's really easy to do.
Some of those look like they're a threshold. Can we reset the threshold?
An example?
Yeah, you want to just scroll down to where you had the Wi-Fi ones on the screen.
You should be able to select a window.
Excessive
of
data rate change. What triggers that? So we got 26 of them, but what was the metric? At what point did that trigger?
So if we go to the
gotcha.
expert, I think over there you
Yeah,
can show
that's why the successive data rate change. Okay, so.
So here and on the right is where you can actually change the threshold for all the experts.
So for any of these, so that's what we were looking at, except the data rate change. We can say do a show info, right? So it'll describe, you know, what it is that we're looking at. So you know, what you're asking about, right? So
and on the other side you can change.
Right,
the
here you can change the value.
Yeah.
Okay, so every one of those has that. That's
yeah,
good.
all the expert even has their own setting that you can change.
Right, where it makes sense. There's some that there's nothing to set, but right.
So I need to ask, as a wireless company, capturing company, if you will, right? Whose wireless network do you have installed?
Cisco.
Yeah, I think everything is Cisco.
Cisco.
But we have test gear from.
Yeah, we have piles of test gear from lots of different companies. So depending on what time of day and test cycle we're on, we have a lot of.
And do you have a preferred wireless adapter that you typically advocate? Is it the Raylink? Is it stay away from Intel?
Oh my God! Like the hardest question of
sorry.
all, so, because they change all the time.
They
so
change the chipset out, you know, in mid-run. You know, you'll get a D-Link and it'll be Atheros, and then, you know, the next production run it'll be Raylink because they got a better deal.
But for the longest time, we were promoting the Cisco one. It was first it was the D-Link D-Ray WSP 600N, and then it transitioned to a Cisco one, the AE1000 with the same device, and they switched out the chipset.
So if you could recommend a chipset, then
we recommend Atheros or Raylink based chipsets, and
Atheros
Atheros preferably only because that's a driver that we write. So if bugs come in against that driver, I know who to go talk to get those fixed. You know, if it's a bug against a Raylink driver, you know, I have my contacts in Raylink, but it's a slower process. You know, that said, right now in the market, there's a lot more Raylink-based wireless USB adapters than there are Atheros-based. Atheros seems to mostly be out of the, external USB connected market.
You know who made the chip off of the AC, or off of the 3-station string adapter? Excuse me.
Yeah, all of the ones that I'm using, the ones I'm using here are all Raylink.
Are all Raylink.
This is a Raylink, and this guy's a Raylink. Both readily available. I'd recommend actually either one of these. This was made by a Taiwanese company called TrendNet, and this is made by Edamax.
The Proxim, the Proxim 8494s. They're one of the most common cards used for air magnets surveys, and also Wi-Fi analysis.
It works
Ask what the
also.
support is.
Are those is it Atheros based?
You know what chipset?
Yeah, the Atheros.
Yes.
Yeah, because typically if it's you said it was Baga or
Proxim.
oh Proxim.
And I think because they're an enterprise, they're actually pretty decent quality cards for a client because they're not a Soho manufacturer. They seem to be one of the better quality of the.
It costs a lot more than those.
Yeah. 150 a pound.
Well, you have a driver issue too if you're using other folks' products that require a custom driver.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Is there any way
If
to
it's
run
the
air
same
magnet?
chipset, yeah.
Same
There's
chipset, different driver.
no, there's no way to run Air Magnet right now, and also the same. If you're using something that has the same driver.
Right.
And we don't actually we run into that rarely, but actually it came up just the other day in a customer case, but it doesn't come up very often at all.
And within a VM, this has no issues running.
Yeah.
We test it all the time.
Yeah.
Also, we're expecting a new Raylink driver next week or Monday after next.
Right.
And they claim to do a fixed 100% bug for
Right.
Is there anybody you would recommend staying away from a chipset perspective?
The ones they don't support.
Yeah, we only have the Raylink and the Atheros.
I like Intel, Broadcom.
Well, first we can't support any of those other ones. I mean, we actually are in conversation with Broadcom again. We did support. We did have Broadcom support a while back, and Broadcom had made the changes, and they're looking into that again. But
Doesn't Intel only
no word there.
Fluke now?
Intel's an issue for us because they don't have a method for putting it in promiscuous mode, and they really don't seem interested. About a year or two ago, they had some published APIs for the 3945 chipset, and we used their APIs, and we could put them in promiscuous mode, and everything worked well. And then they went and kind of pulled support for those APIs and didn't put them in any of the chipsets after that. And
I think
even though they
even
use our product
the
all the
magnet
time, they
ones
don't seem
doesn't
interested in
support that
providing
either.
support through the chipset.
Yeah, I think even Air Magnet has the same issue with the Intel ones. I don't think there's any.
I think wasn't Devon saying that it's really just Fluke now that, or was it not even Fluke that supported?
I don't think so. I think they had the same issue.
Yeah, those kinds of issues tend to affect everybody in the business, not just one vendor. And that's kind of why Case had their own $600 devices for USB devices.
Have you guys ever thought about making your own adapter?
Not making our own, but OEMing one so that we have a consistent supply of them. Yeah, we're actually thinking about that. But
Do you have drivers for what case with your AirPCAP?
We have an AirPCAP adapter, so you can actually use AirPCAP with OmniPeek. That adapter's on that MyPeek site that I showed you.
I mean, it's a
Software.
It's
It's
software.
just so-
Software. Yeah.
So it's not a driver?
A lot of things for us. No, because we couldn't rewrite the driver, so it's kind of like a shim.
Oh, okay. But if you have those NICs,
Yep, it's on, and it's on the MyPeek site. You can download it from there, or I can send it to you.